innovation. You need human interaction, conflict, argument, debate. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to welcome each one of you for the debating completion tonight. I am Daisy Gallardo,
And I am Ronor Mayas.
and we will be your host till the end of the session.
The topic for the debates is pursuance of face-to-face classes to senior high school level in the Philippines. Now, let's welcome the two groups who stands in an affirmative side and a negative side. On affirmative side, we have Mr. Jobert D. Ocampo, Jr., Mr. Javdel Dordas, Ms. J. Tricia Eliremo, and Ms. Cristel K. Latina. While on the other side, we have Ms. Gemma Rose Sumayan, Mr. Kurt Torrejos, Mr. June Michael Teves, and Ms. Kimberly Tirante. Each team will be given 7 minutes for constructive speech, 5 minutes for interpellation, and 3 minutes for rebuttal to put their view across. The pursuance of face-to-face classes is an interesting topic and ever relevant to the students today. Without further ado, let's begin the debate.
The first speaker for constructive speech is Mr. Jobert D. Ocampo, Jr. from affirmative side.
Good evening everyone, my name is Gilbert D. Ocampo Jr. and now I have before pursuance of face-to-face classes in the Philippines, specifically in the senior high school students. Face-to-face classes help us interact with other individuals of their own age, be better disciplined, follow regular schedule, and improve our physical fitness and mental alertness. And lastly, interaction with good teacher help us motivate to achieve higher marks. And in face-to-face classes, you'll be able to concentrate harder on your learning because there will be less instruction than if you were at home. Better debating stories and real-world example from teacher and students. The importance of face-to-face interaction in education, for example, is vital. In person, social interaction has a richness that might feel hard to replicate in the digital world. The biggest opportunity that face-to-face training presents is the ability to discuss, collaborate, practice, and role-play all live and with guidance from a facilitator on hand. But in this pandemic, face-to-face classes will be intermittent, staggered, or in shape with reduced class size. This will afford social distancing, limit contact intensity, and keep monitoring to manageable levels. In a blending of face-to-face and distance learning modalities, face-to-face classes will serve the following purposes: to allow face-to-face activities in aid of distance learning, including directly checking the learning progress and soliciting feedback from the learners, conduct formative and summative assessment face-to-face, conduct interactive and collaborative activities among the learners, allow access to school-based resources such as libraries, laboratories, and workshop and internet connectivity, conduct teacher-student consultation, among others, allow learners to access mental health and psychosocial support services in school, allow learners to access learner support services such as school health and nutrition activities, youth information activities, and permitted school sports activities, among others. Provided they do not constitute mass gathering, the school shall restrict conduct of large gathering and activities such as field trip, sports, festival, and flag ceremony. That's all, thank you.
Let us now proceed to the opposition team. The first speaker for constructive speech is Mr. John Michael Teves from negative side.
Schooling is one of the most affected aspects of human life due to coronavirus 2019 or COVID-19 pandemic. Since the rise and the threat of the pandemic, many countries around the world have decided to temporarily close schools that have affected millions of students. Consequently, students who are mostly children have been facing a learning crisis due to the pandemic. Here in the Philippines, the government's Department of Education has come up with guidelines to implement online and modular distance learning delivery of instruction. This is to safeguard students from being infected by the disease. Predicaments are raised whether the country is ready to open its schools for students to go for face-to-face learning despite having been one of the longest and strictest lockdowns in the world.
Let us now proceed to the interpellation. Let's hear from affirmative side.
First of all, I'd like to state in Jobert's argument that you have said in your first line that students can afford social distancing, limit contact intensity, and keep monitoring to manageable levels. How can you say that students are responsible enough to do that? Again, how can you say that students are responsible enough to do that?
Okay. I think student is responsible because that may help them to gain more knowledge, because face-to-face classes is very important to their knowledge, because without the face-to-face classes they may hard to gain knowledge and learning. That's why I think the students be responsible to that, and that's all thing. Yeah.
Actually, I am not asking on the responsibility of the students about their knowledge on face-to-face. I am talking about the responsibility of the students when it comes on implementing themselves sa social distancing. Are they responsible enough to do that? Zang maghimo ng social distancing, because according to research, our age, we love to hang out with friends, we love to talk, a lot of friends na tapad like that. So do you think we are responsible enough to implement social distancing in ourselves?
Yes, for me, yes, because social to avoid COVID.
So, as you have said that the government or the Department of Education has come up with the guidelines to implement online and modular distance learning delivery of instruction, thus the implementation of online and modular learning 100% effective. How can you secure the knowledge of students where not all students itself don't have the alternative tool for their studies, such as the cellular phones?
Okay, and do you think if face-to-face classes is being implemented, do you think you as a student will not going to use any sources from the internet access that was being utilized by mobile phones?
Even me as a student, I use cellular phones to search some on Google, but not all students have the weapon to search such. They rely sometimes on the library of the school, or even the knowledge of teachers who taught them in the lessons. The point is, it is better to have a face-to-face class for them to ask personally the topic to classmates, rather teachers, or even at school facilitators. That is.
And no, not personally. I mean, can you afford risking your lives in doing that just to do that kind of desire? You as a student, do you think you can risk your lives, even your family, you can risk their lives just to attain your desire to go to school just to learn? Actually, there are two modalities that we are being utilized when students cannot access on internet, cannot go to online learning, then modular modality is there where you can study there, you can personally view the paper that was being provided by the teacher, and I think by that you can learn from it without risking your lives, because if you are going to school, you are actually risking your lives, not just yours but also your family.
If we not take the risk, then where's the change? My point is, why we're going to be at risk if we have now a vaccination for 18 years old and above, which facilitators and other people can be safe at all.
And do you think COVID-19 would stop if you are being vaccinated? Because actually, vaccine is not a foolproof, and you already know that vaccine is still there. It is invisible. It cannot be seen, and the enemy is always there. So it means that the environment still is dangerous. We know that teachers are being vaccinated, but still they are only allowed to go to school 3 times in a week. And I think Mrs. Loren have naglaong sila ng ato sa ato. We are still not safe even though we are being vaccinated, because the enemy itself is there. We cannot see it. And the environment itself is also dangerous. Though you are vaccinated, still the COVID-19 would not stop. So still you are at risk.
To add to that, also our topic is pursuance of face-to-face classes in senior high school, which commonly they are age 18 lower, so they can't get the vaccine.
Mr. Gerd, or DOH, together with the vaccine cluster, will begin the nationwide rollout of COVID-19 vaccination among children aged 12 to 17 starting November 3, according to the Philippine Statistic Authority, or PSA. There are around 12.7 million children aged 12 to 17 in 2021.
To tackle that question, I'm gonna repeat Ms. Gemma's argument. As we know, the vaccine is not foolproof. It may reduce the chances of a person suffering terribly from the virus, but it doesn't fully take away the risk that the person may still suffer from dire consequences of contracting the virus. So it doesn't really solve all the problems, and the virus still stays atop our concerns. Being vaccinated doesn't matter. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't fully take away the risk of the consequences, like dying.
Okay, the time is up for interpolation. Let us proceed to the second statement. Let's hear from a negative side.
The Filipino desire to conduct face-to-face classes because they are in views of how other countries are already conducting them. what they don't consider is that we don't have the same capabilities as them. In terms of healthcare, we are way behind them. Most foreign schools even have COVID testing facilities in them. Here in the Philippines, we would need to pay an average worker's 1 week payroll. Their classrooms are not as crowded as ours. The schools and overall environment in other countries are way safer since they can disinfect their places as much as they want because they are not restricted by their money since most of them are not suffering as much poverty as the Philippines.
I do believe that face-to-face learning is better than online learning because students have access to various learning resources on campus versus off. Face-to-face allows students to have instant gratification with answers. When a student is in class, they can ask questions while it is fresh on their mind or help with a particular problem. If the students was at home online, they would have to wait for the instructor to email them back. Is that really more conducive to a person's education and learning? How sure are we that students learned exactly the specific thoughts of a certain lesson? Therefore, pursuance of face-to-face is an effective way for the learners. That's all.
Since we don't have enough time, let us now proceed to the rebuttal. Let's hear first from affirmative side. Should the pursuance of face-to-face classes to senior high school approve in the Philippines?
Yes, the pursuance of face-to-face classes in senior high school here in the Philippines should be implemented. According to results of a new national research study, 78% of more than 1,000 students surveyed still believe it is easier to learn in a classroom. Students are able to physically see the work and are able to use tactile stimulation for their learning needs. Having face-to-face, students are able to find out the type of learner they are. And discovering their learning style, students can use their knowledge to guide them in their educational experience and needs. Most of the students are fortunate enough to avail resources needed for online learning, as well as adjusting to the new normal situation. There is a lack of competence and motivation because there might be disturbance, especially in their medium of learning, which are the gadgets and internet connection. Having a face-to-face classes can improve more abilities of the students, especially to senior high school, because they are preparing for college. Medium of learning such as gadgets and internet connection can cause distraction, which is spending time surfing through the internet instead of doing assessments. To add on that, virtual classes are not applicable to all students, especially to those who are not fast enough to catch up to the lessons that was lectured or discussed. Errors occurs all the time. Therefore, pursuance of face-to-face is an effective way for learners. That's all.
You have said again that not all students are capable in using online learning. Again, I am telling you all that is why blended learning is being implemented, where it is a combination of classes conducted online for students and schools that have reasonably reliable internet access and printed learning modules for other less connected areas. And you have said that we should pursue the implementation of face-to-face classes. And how are you going to make sure that the government can provide the inadequate health facilities in every school here in the Philippines? How can you make sure that the government will provide the needs of the school in implementing these face-to-face classes? Since we are in the midst of pandemic, can they be sure that they can afford health facilities in every school here in the Philippines?
Government has enough budget for the for that problem. I will present some facts for
So, show us the facts. Show us the facts stating that the government would abruptly provide the needs of the school, especially the inadequate health facilities. Because I can also show the percentage of schools that are not yet capable in opening face-to-face classes in this time of pandemic.
According to Department of Budget and Management, the government in effectively addressing the COVID-19 pandemic, the 4.506 trillion 2021 national budget will help the country recover by supporting the implementation of long-term and sustainable plans, programs, and projects aimed at stimulating and boosting economic activity nationwide. And refer to the response to the pandemic. The Philippines has the budget to National Health Insurance Program 71.4 billion pesos. Medical assistance to indigent patients 17 billion pesos. Human Resources for Health Program 16.6 billion pesos. And for new health programs, projects for COVID-19 response, there would be purchase of personal protective equipment, since there will be 4.7 billion pesos. Procurement of COVID-19 response equipment and infrastructure under the HFEP is 4.1 billion pesos. And many more. Thank you.
So, thank you, Zabdel, for stating the facts that you have gathered. Well, how can you support this one? Inadequate health facilities in school. Data from the DepEd shows that there are only 3,657 public school nurses for 21,741,049 public school students this year. This means a school nurse would have to attend to an average of 5,945 students. Meanwhile, DepEd data shows that only 28% of the 47,013 or 13,081 schools have a clinic. Only 13,081 schools have clinic in terms of basic hand washing facilities 44,043 of the 47,013 schools have access to them. So, how can you support that the budget of the government are enough to sustain this problem?
Jem, my con is, why should we rely our safe days to government health programs if we can have it by our own? Which our main aim in this midst of pandemic is our safety. Hence, we can have our safeties by doing or executing the proper protocol. So, we can have a face-to-face class, pursuance of face-to-face class, even though health facilities or nurses, you mean the nurses or the institution of a school don't have, which we can have our safeties by our own.
But
by
in
following
this
the health
time of
protocol.
pandemic, actually, Jay, in this time of pandemic, we are talking about the grade 11, the senior high school students, where the grade 11 is 16 years old or 17, while the grade 12 is 18. The public nurses is very important. And also, the school itself must have a health facilities because we are again in the midst of pandemic, and students should the school should provide that because students is at risk, while online modality and modular modality is being provided where you can study at home, you can enjoy solving or answering the modules whole day wherever you want, na safe ka kaysa zaong ka sa school na you are risking yourselves, not just you but also your family.
To add to that, Miss Latina said that studies say that students learn better during face-to-face classes. Again, we are not saying that online classes is better, but we are only recommending that with the given situation now, we should resort to online or modular learning because it is safer during the pandemic. It's just the right thing.
While your recommendation have 100% effect, is 100% effective? Do you think so?
Are you saying that if online is better than face-to-face, Jay?
What I am saying is, does online modality has 100%? Sabat ako ingay na? Has 100%, is 100% effective to most students, where
No.
skills of TVL senior high schools are not being attained. How can we ensure the future of learners if we rely their knowledge and skills on the web?
Refer to Miss Gemma Sumayan about facility of nurses. We're talking for senior high school, grade 11 and grade 12.
Yes,
Grade 7
I am talking about the grade 11 to grade 12 students. What I am pertaining is that if we are going to pursue the face-to-face classes, do the school can afford the health facilities? Because in the midst of pandemic, we are in need of the health facilities. Because this COVID-19 isn't just a temporary battle. This battle is forever, like we are at risk always. So as what Jay have stated, yes, face-to-face class is good, but I am pertaining about the risk. So we personally have experienced the online or modular modality, or even the TVL strand. We experienced being nag-study inside home and Zaon gud ang module, ang module ra kibali ang atag basihan. Still, dari man lagi gihapon ta sa college na jay gihapon ato learnings na nakatuonan. Though online modality kay I am not saying na dili effective ho. Kuan mas lesser ang isa effectiveness sa face-to-face. Still, when we are going to talk about the risk, it is better to stay at home learning while going outside risking yourself and your family. Because if we are going to talk about learning, tapos yata magkuan sa risk ng ato family, especially sa ato mga lola na vulnerable na makuan sa COVID, then we are too selfish enough. Like, nukaturata para maka-learn without knowing, without concerning the risk sa ato
Are you
family.
totally sure that safety in your home?
What?
How you totally sure that you are safety in your home?
No, but it lessens the risk of contracting the virus. We know that our parents need to work because there are no alternates. But now we are given alternates in school, like learning in modality learning and modular learning and also online classes. Even though the protocols will be mandated or in the schools, but still should not be followed. Just like what happened in South Korea, even though the students were temperature checked, wore masks on campus, and of course observed social distancing, but still there were 2 students tested positive, and by that the school was first to close. So I think it is best to adapt the new normal modality, which is the online learning. Yeah.
Now the time of rebuttal is over. Let's proceed in the last statement of affirmative side.
So, if the system is not carefully planned and thought out, things will not change for the better. The pandemic has compelled education systems around the world to adopt distance learning modalities for basic education at a scale not done before. Among the negative developments that are happening, still face-to-face classes remain a necessity for education. The social aspect of learning, where students are able to interact with their teachers and classmates, cannot be fully replaced by distance learning modalities. The skills of students for self-learning is uneven. Household resources to assess children in the learning process are also uneven, affected by household income, education of household members, access to internet, number of children in the household needing to be assisted, and the work situation of household members. Without more consistent instructional guidance by teachers, the learners finding it difficult to learn by themselves and without household capacity for instructional support will be left behind. The time devoted for the learning process without direct monitoring by teachers also differ vastly across students and households. Allowing teachers to see their students face-to-face even on an intermittent schedule will enable greater opportunities to check on the learning progress of the students to provide needed instructional supervision and interventions. Students who will be prioritized are the learners who struggle to meet the required learning competencies and the senior high school learners enrolled in technical, vocational, livelihood TVL track requiring workshop equipment in school, and learners documented to be affected by mental health concerns that may be alleviated by face-to-face interactions. Priority shall also be given to learners who demonstrated the readiness to observe health protocols, and therefore pursuance of face-to-face is an effective way for the learners as they needed it for themselves. That's all.
Thank you for that. Now let us hear the final statement from the negative side.
Step Ed should not rush into face-to-face classes because our country's top priority should be the children's safety to ensure that we first need to meet certain requirements which as of now we aren't capable of. Instead, certain requirements are vaccination of all students in the Philippines, which is almost impossible to picture since we can't vaccinate our population who are 17 years or younger. Proper facilities in the school which can help in the fight against COVID, like hand washing stations and proper disinfecting tools for classrooms in each school. And lastly, proper social distancing should become the norm if ever face-to-face classes will be conducted, which in the Philippines' current state couldn't hold up to that because of how crowded classrooms are in the country. So with those statements, I think it's easy to conclude that we still shouldn't conduct face-to-face classes and that we shouldn't be hasty and instead be more patient and rational in our pursuit of conducting face-to-face classes.
Thanks to the two sides who shared their thoughts and opinions regarding the pursuance of face-to-face classes on senior high school students here in the Philippines. Hoping that you have learned a significant knowledge with regards to the given argument. With that, our debate ends here. Thank you so much, everyone.